So welcome guys. Thanks for coming on. Thank you everyone for being here live, and for those watching the replay, welcome to our weekly 8FM book club hangouts, live discussions. We are continuing on with Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. Chapter is about liking. This is an interesting chapter. I think as marketers, we're already, we always hear know, like, and trust, right? You have to kind of get to know, and then you like, and then you trust, right? But one thing I kind of wanted to, we'll go into it because he talks about certain characteristics that involve liking or likability. But one thing it made me think of too is a training from, I forget which training it's from, but with David Wood, where he talks about too that you don't have to, it just made me think of this now, but you don't have to, it's not really about building relationships with people. And sometimes people take that know, like, and trust to mean that. It's more about developing rapport. So it's not about, holding hands and touching butts, right? It's about rapport and being able to, hello, welcome on. Thank you, welcome on. You don't actually mind muting for now because there's a lot of background noise where I can mute you. So it made me think of that too, because, sometimes maybe, and I've been guilty of this, taking this principle of liking, where I want people to like me in my business or to come into my business or my team, being too nice, right? But taking it almost a step too far and maybe not treating it enough as a business where, you need to develop that kind of authority. And because we've talked about this too in the past, from previous chapters, that obligation to want to help constantly, it has to do with liking too. And I've taken it a step too far sometimes. Naturally we develop friendships, right, with those people we work with. I think we're all friends here. Right? But in order to really have a successful business, it's not, the friendship aspect isn't really what it's about. It's about that rapport and having that trust factor, right? And so I know, like, looking at our own marketing, there are certain things we kind of implemented, when we first got started, we were, I'll admit it, we were kind of spammers. We just didn't know what to do. And we were just all over Facebook and sharing Empower Network everywhere. And friends blocked us and family blocked us. And they're like, my whole newsfeed is full of your links. And I'm like, wow, okay, I don't know. But we started getting sales and new members and things like that. Then we got better and we learned. But we developed certain key things. And, if I think about these things, because he talks about these characteristics that are physical attractiveness, similarity, compliments, contact, and cooperation, right? And I'm trying to kind of think about our business and our marketing and how those things apply. And I agree in some ways not, because it's, I have opinions about, let's say, the physical attractiveness, right? I know that, no matter what we do, I guess, almost can't help that we respond to people a certain way, right? But I think that, and this is from testing multiple Facebook ads, right? Where I would do a PPC ad and I would test 10 different photos. And I would take the super glossy, really bright, beautiful photos, right? And then I'd add some in that were grainy, you could barely see us. It was dark. We were off center on the camera. It was just it wasn't at all professional looking at all. And it was just not like that. And those ones would get more clicks. Those ones would get more leads. And so certain things, maybe about other aspects of the marketing were working, right? But I don't know if you guys wanted to start the discussion there, and if you guys have any opinions about that or about any of the other kind of things he was talking about.
I think just leading on from that, similarity was one of the things that they talked about. So in that example for you, Kat, with those two different, maybe the people looking at those posts could actually relate more to it just being real and not super professional looking. They felt a more similar connection and therefore a likability with you. That might explain that aspect, that just brings in still the concept of likability, but similarity.
True.
Yeah, there was so much in this chapter. One of the things that I thought was fascinating was the example of the car salesman guy who one of his key strategies was sending a card to his people, anyone who had, kind of had contact with him through the business, over that year. He would send them a card, and on it, all it said was, "I like you," literally. And it was just like, that, that sort of, talking about compliments and how we respond to compliments. Sorry, my little boy's just come in here. Look, Jetty.
Hello. What a cute.
But literally
email marketing. Just send emails. I like you.
Yeah, we can test it as a subject line. But, just how we respond to compliments and the experience of feeling liked as well as liking. I thought it was fascinating. He wasn't saying anything else. Like, you'd think very impersonal because it's like a car sales situation. It's not like a real interpersonal friendship. But he put that down. A core part of his success was actually doing that.
I think that's interesting because one of the things I'm doing right now is every day when there's a birthday on my Facebook friends, I'm sending a picture of a cake my son made me like 2 years ago, the very first cake they ever made me. And it's all crumbled and it looks awful. And I say something like, "May you always have someone in your life who loves you enough to bake a cake even if they don't know how." I get so much response from that picture because it's not the slick and glossy, the beautiful one that everybody sends, right? It's an ugly cake made by my son, but it's the only one everybody always sends comments on, right? I used to send pretty things. I get comments on this ugly thing all the time because they know it's from you too, right? You didn't get it from some internet space or something. It really was my cake.
I love that. Well, it's like the psychology behind it, right? So
yeah, anything you can make like personal, really personal, that they can tell, I think makes a real difference.
Because they think that you like them more. Because you took that extra time to do that. Whereas it's easy to just get a stock photo, and I do that all the time. I grab stock photos, which probably shouldn't do.
And they don't even know my VA is sending it out, right? So I have my VA sending those. I wrote it and I said, send this out every day. So I have this VA every day sending out those things. And then 2 days later, I have her send out a follow-up. Hey, how was your birthday? It's time to catch up. What's new with you? And those might not lead to sales, but they're leading to people getting to know, like, and trust me. And eventually, who knows where it might be. But there's a relationship there now.
Yeah. And they'll remember you for that. Yeah. So, because then he talks about, like, there's something I was going to say from what Terry was saying before, but I forget. I think it was about the email marketing. Like, even just doing emails where you kind of just send emails as kind of similarly to how he would for holidays, right? Nothing else, like no pitch, no nothing, just an I like you and Happy New Year or a Merry Christmas or anything like that. Because we have done that before too and gotten kind of good response. And, you know, one thing that I still find strange kind of in this whole internet marketing space is that people really, I mean, I know that people connect through video, right? And it's like we can develop this like really massive following, right, through the internet, and kind of analyzing, because I mean, I learned a ton from this book and applied a lot of that stuff in our marketing, and kind of peeled away layers of how maybe I thought I should be in our marketing, and being more myself, the likability factor increases, right, where you're more personal, where you're more, right, not like that glossy photo, but just yourself. And that seems to be what people relate to the most in our marketing, and then feel like they know us, right? But taking it a step further with this, you know, I was talking about rapport, right? Building rapport, and not really going down this path so much of necessarily having friendships, but having these kind of business relationships where, you know, you can work with your team and have the rapport where they trust your authority and your influence, right? But still like you, right? Because I know like there's different also kind of approaches to, like, if we're talking about team building and leadership, right? Some people have a more, a different approach in terms of, you know, how to team build, right? But even if you look at books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or just like these books about mindset or personal development, it always comes down to like these really simple concepts. And, you know, this chapter almost seems like it's too obvious, like it's too simple, liking. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, people should like you if they're going to work with you or join you or buy from you, right? But it's still fascinating to kind of bring it down. And even like this whole like Tupperware party thing, the fact that it's, you know, you're going to a friend's house and you may not want any more Tupperware, but you end up buying Tupperware, right? And, you know, we work with a lot of network marketers that are offline. And I kind of think, you know, I guess I can understand better from a network marketer's perspective, if they've been building offline, why they may think that, you know, not that it's appealing to go to your warm market, but maybe in some situations it's easier, right? I mean, there's a certain level of discomfort approaching family and friends, but I think there's, you know, marketers out there that have crossed that line where they're not uncomfortable just constantly pitching their friends and family, and they've crossed that barrier of fear, and they just do it because it's comfortable. And thinking that, you know, coming online, because you know, some people, the way they market is, you know, recruit strangers. But there's something almost scary about that, right? Because where is the likability? How do you build rapport? How do you build a relationship with someone you don't know across the world? And, you know, where is the similarity, right? That relatability, right? I don't know if everyone here has experienced it, where, you know, you may get a new member and they joined you, right? So they may feel some form of similarity or likability towards you, but you don't know anything about them, right? And getting on the phone with someone you do not know, that you know nothing about, right, sometimes can have like this, you know, like I can feel a bit uncomfortable. Welcome on, Elizabeth.
Hi, sorry, I had to go pick up my car and didn't have a
No worries.
drill over.
I'll just mute you off for now. So yeah, but you know, what I've learned is kind of being able to go out there and make that call or send the email or add them on Facebook or whatever. What ends up happening is, because maybe they related to you in some way, I usually find it can relate back, right? And it's just kind of a different kind of position, because we're more in the position of like a mentor or a leader to that person because they joined us. But there's a similarity there somewhere. And I find that really fascinating, that we can build an online business that's global, right? With people that we have nothing really in common with, but we actually do, right? Like all of us here, we have in common the fact that I think that we're dreamers, right? That we want more, that we want to go for the dream that we want, that we want to go for that, you know, that version of our version of freedom. And then that kind of links us all, even though we're so different backgrounds, ages, experiences, parts of the world, right? So yeah, so I know I just kind of ranted a little bit there. But I don't know, this chapter, like, I guess the simplicity is there in it, right? But it's always the simple things, right? If you break it down in your business as to what really works, it's usually like, it's like you should always simplify everything, I think. And simplifying, like even let's say talking about Instagram, for example, you know, a lot of us do the Instagram method. If we can simplify to what, you know, let's say Instagram wants as us being people that use the platform, and we can go as close to that as possible, then we kind of make our lives simpler, right? And then theirs as well, because now they're getting kind of customers that are using the platform more how they want. And then we're also getting, you know, audiences, right? So I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on this liking chapter? Anything to add? Anything about the stories in here?
Yeah, I've got a few, but Don or Liz, do you want to? I just want to leave space for. Do you want to jump in, Don, or I'm happy to share a couple of things that I took notes on.
No, go ahead, Terry. You're good.
One of the things, yeah, but this concept of association. So how we, they did sort of a whole chunk on how we like to be associated with success, or we avoid being associated with, what we perceive as more negative, and that the more sort of insecure or low self-image or self-esteem, where they did, they looked at studies where people would want to be doing more associating with success to sort of bolster up their own self-image. So, and people who felt more like they needed to do that. I thought that was fascinating. But they just, a bunch of examples, but especially the weather, like the weather, people who report the weather. If they report bad weather, they they talked about this whole thing about people getting up to death threats, for telling you that there's going to be bad weather. But just people dislike the messenger of bad news to the point of, quite hostile and not wanting to be associated kind of with that. And then the opposite of good weather, they'd, get all this good association. So that was one of the things, just this sort of whole thing about likability and association, that we can just, we kind of do on autopilot without thinking, often trying to sort of be associated and experience. And it true, people perceive you as more likable if you're kind of associated, this reflected glory kind of idea. That was one of the things. And the other was, and the other part of that was that if you perceive that there's been some kind of public image, your public image has been damaged in some way, that you're more likely to want to restore it through success association. And that was they're talking about sports fans and stuff like that, and people, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, John, but people feeling so personal, if they're a fan of a particular sport or a particular person, just feeling this sense of it's so personal if something's publicly doesn't go well with that they just feel it so personally and want to try and restore it somehow. Do you want to elaborate on
the people that they did the studies at the colleges, and when the football team won on a Saturday, the students would be wearing their jerseys, and when they lost they weren't, or they would ask what the score of a game was a couple of weeks ago, and if they won, the students knew the score right away, and if they didn't, they came up with, well, we didn't do that well, and it was always we when they win, and it's they when they lose. So I thought that was really interesting. And also the other instance that he gave in this was the one where, as you perceive yourself when you're looking at yourself, where you take the photograph and you flip it and you give it to your friend and say, which one do you like? And invariably, you'll pick the one that's the reflection you look at in the mirror every day, and they'll pick the one that's actually the opposite. So I thought that was very interesting about how that works out. So.
Yeah. That had to do with whether or not, I think, the way we perceive, loud car. Because we're used to seeing the one the mirror image as opposed to the other people. So that was interesting. I like that. And I don't know if people have already talked about this, but it was very predictable. In fact, I knew what he was going to say when they had the integration, the school integration, and how the kids, it's very easy to have the us and them, until they have to cooperate for a like cause, for a like, they have to be a team because they have the same goals. And then also
named Carlos. Yeah. That was a really good story.
Yeah, and all of a sudden the kids that didn't like each other, once they had to work with one another, actually wanted to be with each other afterward, right. when they put him in because they were saying it like it was way too easy to get him to form factions. And it was almost like this Frankenstein, like, how are we going to get him back? And I thought, I know, get him on a common cause. That's exactly, before I even read it, I thought, yep, that's when people perceive that they have a common cause, then they're more likely to join. And it just makes me think of, like Myra's thing where, she's appealing to moms and they have in common wanting to do something as stay-at-home moms or whatever. So I don't know why that popped in my head too.
Yeah, I thought that's awesome. It's like having contact with people doesn't necessarily lead to liking them more. Right. If there's some kind of sense of competition or hostility or just where you're competing somehow, it's actually less likely to cause more liking or more connection. But as soon as there's some common cause, got to work cooperatively to benefit all, then you actually start liking each other as well.
The stories at the camp were good too, about the two factions at the camp where they were at odds with each other, and then they had to form alliances to fix the water and fix different things. And then they were riding on the same bus when that would never happen at any before. Right. So
that's true. And it's interesting, I've noticed that reconnecting, now that we have Facebook, we're reconnecting with people from high school that you never even would have talked to, and now we're listening to their stories of their lives and stuff like that. And we're all on that similar stage of life where we have certain age kids. A lot of us are. I'm 60, so a lot of us are grandparents. So and it's interesting, hanging out with people. I did that not long ago, just hang out with these girls that none of whom I probably even spoke to at school, but now we're Facebook friends and we're commenting on each other's lives and giving advice and stuff like that. And it's being received and liked and stuff. So I thought that, because we have we're similar now. Our differences we're similar now because we're on the same stage of life that we were then, but it's just different, I guess, when you get older. So that's another comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I do actually like the people that I know from high school. I like them more now, a lot of them, and I find myself liking them more and more as time goes by, which I find funny. So maybe that is one of those things that we have more and more relatability or similarity as we grow older and kind of have life experiences, and for some reason it creates more. And probably not for everyone.
I think also the fact is that you're out of a competitive environment, which is the school, is kind of this environment where you kind of end up being more divided somehow. And so no longer being in that is just allowing a different relatability to happen, maybe, as well.
Like that story about how some will raise their hand to answer the question and some won't know the answer. So I had that. I mean, I never thought of it like that, I guess, but that would create different, cliques and all that stuff within school too. I was not in the good clique.
I like the story of Carlos, how they actually, completely changed about him and just because it was to their advantage to help him rather than to tease him and to put him down. And then they found out he was, smarter than they thought. It's just that he didn't speak English as well. And so that it was to their advantage to help him and his school experience got better. I thought, it's kind of like when you watch those movies, happy ending. Yay.
Let's go. One of the other things they talked about is the luncheon technique and about food and how we tend to like people in association with food. I thought that was just fascinating. It's so true.
When everything changed, when the questions were asked and things changed, whether they were eating or not, and they got a better response in the eating part, they couldn't remember that they actually had changed their opinion while they were eating. It was like one of those things where it was like a response that it was, he actually talked about Pavlov and his dog and the eating. It's like you can tell someone while they're eating, you know, this is something you really should do. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, great, while they're eating, and they'll just take it and run with it from there. And then later on, they'll be like, what did I agree to? I don't, you know, okay.
Well, I met Romeo over sandwiches, so he cooked sandwiches, and I got sandwiches from him, so that seems to have played a factor, and I love sandwiches.
Cool.
Awesome. So on that note, really fantastic discussion. I don't know if anyone has any final kind of closing remarks, or if we can, you know, end it out here.
I've got one, the how to say no bit.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so that was just about, you know, in a situation when you're in that kind of, buying situation, and to ask yourself, am I liking this person sort of more than I would expect, you know, and sort of reflect in that moment. Is it sort of, it's good, and not to kind of go against and go, oh, if I'm liking this person, then I won't buy, or I'll kind of try to dislike them, not because, you know, liking someone's good, you know, it is good. But just if it's kind of way, you know, out of proportion somehow, that it's likely that it's kind of influencing your, there's some compliance thing happening there. And so he would just say, look, if you can just recognize that, pause and differentiate the liking of that person to the product or whatever it is you're buying, and just go, just look at the merits of the product completely separate to that person and make a decision based on that, rather than feeling sort of just this automatic, all right, I'm going to buy it because I like this person. So that was the essence of that, I think.
Or like the people who are buying it too. I had that situation where I did something where it's like, in my gut of guts, I said, this is, you know, I didn't agree with the philosophy of what I was getting. And yet it was because people that I liked and wanted to be liked by were getting it. I ended up, you know, committing myself to something that I'm like, you know, going, oh my gosh. Then I was going, oh my gosh, I got to get out of this because this is not, you know, it's totally, you know, so found myself victim there.
Here's a question to play devil's advocate for everyone. In the age of internet sales, when you're doing videos and podcasts and blog posts, is likability as much of a factor in terms of like a worldwide reach as opposed to a one-on-one? Because basically, for me, this chapter seemed like it was more geared towards like a one-on-one. Because you could be like the kind of person who goes home and kicks your puppy, and like you're on a video like sweet as pie, and people are going to be buying into that, and they don't know what you're really like. So, I mean, is it more like, am I looking at this like maybe this is an older chapter from like when people were in brick and mortar and walking in and talking to each other, as opposed to like, you know, where we're at now, or just throwing it out?
Yeah, but isn't that the same? I mean, someone one-on-one can interact in a certain way and go home and be totally different.
Right.
Is it, you know, it's sort of like at any point when we're putting ourselves in front of someone, whether it's one-on-one, offline, or plural, global, you're choosing what you're sharing. That it's still the same.
You know, it's interesting. I got that. I had a question similar to that in the, you know, when they had that thing about where they flash people's faces, and the more people saw a face again and again, they had more of a liking to them than if they didn't because they didn't know them. So it made me think about like our presence and doing videos and getting out there and just putting our presence out there so that people see us more and more. Is that liking or not liking, I suppose, if they don't like what we're saying, what we're sharing, if that helps us sell what we want to sell, or if that makes any sense.
It's kind of like subliminal. You just like keep putting a face shot into everything you do for like a split second in every video that you put out there. While you're talking, it's just like a half a, you know, a millisecond. Wow. Just keep putting face shots in, and everybody will love you. But that was good, Elizabeth, because you know what? I had forgotten about that from the chapter. And you're right. They did talk about that. He did talk about that.
So it's actually interesting because like being in this kind of online setting and maybe not having that physical connection or contact, maybe the best way to kind of, you know, I guess increase our business or audience or whatever it may be is to put a lot of content and kind of always be in front of people, because what's going to happen is the ones that don't like us, the ones that don't want to be there, by seeing us constantly will just go away. And the ones that do will be more and more and more attracted to us in that sense. And we have this ability to kind of create that. Whereas in person, I guess you kind of, you know, you get to know a person or talk to them. It's you kind of get that impression, or, you know, those, whether you like them or not, right? But online, because it's snippets of, you know, content or information, the best way is just to like seep into their brain and be everywhere, and that automatically causes, you know, some people to leave, to unfollow, to unsubscribe, and then some people to stay, and then to build that rapport and that relationship more. So I mean, retargeting, right? And I mean, I should probably post more on Instagram so it can kind of, you know, I can, because it's like testing it, right? It's being able to do that. So that's an excellent point, that, you know, that makes more sense to me as to why even to put more content out, just to have that, you know, that split happen where you drive people away that aren't, you know, right for your business anyway, or to work with you, and you kind of keep people around more and have them like you more in that way, kind of, not that you're making them like you, but they'll feel more of that, I guess, seeing more of you. And then if they want to join, they're more likely to join, I guess, the more they see you. So,
and that could lead into what Brian was talking about, how then a further separation is if they do like you, maybe they'll be willing to do all those. Remember, he was talking about getting people to go through hoops to get to a certain thing, because it sort of separates out the ones that don't want to do it. But if they're willing to jump through a certain hoops to get to your funnel or whatever, then if they like you, they might be more apt to do those hoops as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And then we have commitment, and all of that commitment, and then social proof, and so fantastic. I like leaving off on that note. So next chapter is chapter 6, authority. So we'll dive into that, and because this book actually has a lot of notes at the end. So this is our second last chapter, actually. It's next to scarcity. And then we just have the epilogue, which I think we'll just combine with the last chapter. So just 2 more chapters left. And just so you know, there's a poll in, depending on when you're watching this, but if you're live or you're watching the replay very soon after, then we have a poll happening right now on 8FM as to our next book. There's already some people. Oh, hey, Brian.
Hey.
We're actually closing out. So,
his ears tingling.
And you were talked about on the Hangout, so you have to go back and watch it now. All good things.
I can't wait.
So if you want to go vote, I actually changed my vote because then I was like, actually I want to read this book more. So to find out what the books are, go ahead and go there and select the book, and join us on our live discussions, of course. And thank you so much for a fantastic discussion, everyone. Appreciate you guys, and thanks for watching. If you're watching, you have questions or comments or feedback, just post them in the comments. And we'll see you guys next week, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.